welcome to today's episode of the Balanced Approach podcast. I'm your host, Louis Padian. I hope that you're doing well and are enjoying the podcast and the topics we've covered so far. These podcasts are released every Monday, Wednesday and Friday, so be sure to subscribe wherever you are listening to be kept up to date. So today we're going to be leading on from what we discussed last episode, where we focused on the why we should focus on sleep. And actually we're going to develop a few little things that work on a lot with clients, and they may not be the flash razzle dazzle stuff that you're looking for, but actually keeping it simple often finds works for most people. And the simpler we can make things, the easier they are to implement, but not just implement that, but implement consistently as well. So when we're looking at weight loss, health, disease, performance, injury, mood, memory, quality of life, we know sleep's really important. So here's 5 simple things that you can work on and focus on and introduce to help improve your sleep. First of all, we're sticking to a regular sleep wake cycle. So this is a biggie for me, that often with clients it's just about the simple question of, right, so when do you go to bed and when do you wake up? And if that varies quite a lot, it's trying to develop that routine. Our bodies love routine, they like a schedule, and often things that we won't realize, but hormone production, things like that are linked with our exposure to light and also our exposure to darkness as well. So having a regular bedtime and wake up time can be really useful in building that consistency with our body tuning down, getting ready to go to sleep before bed, but also waking up feeling good and ready to go, and trying to schedule that in that 7 to 8 or 7 to 9 hour window. It can have a really big impact as well. So people who had a regular sleep cycle or sleep schedule were less likely to experience insomnia was one of the research papers that I read as well. So another thing was creating a relaxing bedtime routine. And this is one of the things I work on a lot with people, is what sort of ways can we signal to our body that it's time to wind down? And it could just be a simple tea. It could be reducing our exposure to light. It could just having a read before bed. And setting up that schedule helps you almost subconsciously know that, right, I need to start relaxing. And little things like reducing the lights and having a book to read before bed to help you switch off can be a really good part of that process. Depending on, some individuals might prefer to have a bit of journaling in there, they might have a meditation in there or a gentle stretch, but it's figuring out what works for you. There's no golden routine that's going to work for everyone. It's about finding out what's going to work for you. Some people, it might just be a 5-6 minute, right, stretch off and get into bed. Other people, it could be half an hour where they slowly lead up to it, and it could be a certain drink, a certain tea that they have, and that sort of gets them in the mood to go to bed. And again, it's just about having that signal for the body to go, right, this time to go to sleep, can help you ease off and get more restful sleep. When we are looking at another thing, so number 3 would be making sure your bedroom is dark, quiet and cool. And this is one of the things that we're really struggling with at the moment when we're traveling in Vietnam, in Hanoi. Very busy, very loud at night, and it's very difficult to sort of get that out. There are some things that we are working on. So darkness helps trigger melatonin in the body to sort of be released throughout the day and helps regulate that sleep wake cycle. So having a little bit of light in the morning helps sort of ease that off. But if you have lights in the room, that can disrupt that hormone production as well. So that's why it's important to have it dark. Quiet, again, it's quite simple. Noises can disrupt sleep, they can wake you up. Our bodies are sort of tuned. We weren't always in nice, secure houses and venues. We were often sort of in communities out in the wild, and noises was something that we should be aware of, I presume. That's the sort of theory that I've read around it, that it's important for us to have those. So if we can make it as quiet as possible, it just means that we're not likely to be disrupted. It's just about trying to find ways around that. Simple thing like having some earplugs if you are going to be in a noisy environment can be really useful. And again, for the darkness, I've got an eye mask and it helps me sort of switch off going to sleep as well, and can just help me drift off a little bit easier. Cool. This was another one that I'm really a fan of. I really like a cold room before going to bed, and when I read into it a little bit more, it's around the body temperature sort of dropping, and a cooler room helping the body do that before sleep helps us relax and fall into that sleep a bit better. And when I looked into the research, they tend to sort of suggest between 18 to 20 degrees Celsius, which is 65 to 68 degrees Fahrenheit. And people who slept at that temperature were more likely to fall asleep quickly and sleep more sound throughout the night as well than people who slept in warmer or cooler rooms than that. So that's number 3. Number 4 is to avoid caffeine and alcohol before bed. So this is one that I've worked with a lot of people when I've worked in the NHS and when I work with them as clients as well. Caffeine is one of the things that is often overlooked, and people don't know the impact it can have, especially on sleep disruption, and it's very individual as well. So again, this is sort of a self-experimentation. I know if I have caffeine now, because we've been having more decaf in the afternoon, then it's going to ruin my sleep for the night. Some people can have coffee just before bed. My mum, for example, does that and sleeps pretty well. So it all depends on the individual. But the reason we talk about cutting caffeine off probably by midday, 2 p.m. at the latest, I suggest, and this is a simple fix, not at the moment while we're in Vietnam, because decaf's quite hard to come by, but often you can just do a simple swap for a decaf tea or a decaf coffee. But caffeine has a half-life of about 5 to 8 hours, but that can vary up to 12 hours. And what does that actually mean? So when we look at a half-life, it's when we drink that drink at 12 o'clock, if it's got a half-life of 12 hours, 12 hours after that, half of the amount of caffeine is still circulating within our body, which is disrupting our sort of sleep settling cycle. So a Red Bull or a coffee could be anywhere between 100 milligrams to 200 milligrams of caffeine. If you're more sensitive, and it could be up to 12 hours, then by midnight, you've still got 100 milligrams, 50 to 100 milligrams within your system. That could be disrupting your sleep. You might not notice it, but taking it out, you might feel a bit better for it. And that sort of is one of those things that people often overlook, is that they have an afternoon coffee, 3, 4, 5 o'clock. And even if they manage caffeine quite well, by 10 p.m. they could still have half of that caffeine within their system. And then they're wondering when they have to get up early in the morning why they're feeling wiped or why they've struggled to get to sleep. And caffeine could be part of that. I'm not saying it's a single thing, could be, but often it's part of the problem. And us managing that could be a real big, easy fix by just going, right, swap to decaf in the afternoons. And decaf doesn't mean completely free of caffeine, but it's just very, very minimal caffeine. So being more aware of that, don't have to really sacrifice anything. It's a good replacement. We're not removing anything, which is a really, really good approach, because we're not changing the habits, which is quite difficult. We're just going, right, so instead of having your normal coffee, just try and get a decaf version of that. It can make a big difference. So yeah, alcohol similarly, people tend to feel that alcohol puts them to sleep, but what we tend to find is that actually they're just almost passed out, they're not asleep, and sleep is quite an active process really, even though it looks like you're doing nothing. The brain is very active during sleep, and alcohol, which we'll discuss on another episode because it's a beast into its own, and I think there's a lot of information that people have misconstrued. There is a role for it, and there needs to be a balance with it, but it can negatively impact your sleep so much, and you probably won't get as much deep or REM sleep if you have alcohol in your system, and therefore you could be passed out for the same amount of time as you normally are, but you won't feel any of the benefits as well. You might feel groggy, and again, if your goals are beyond just improving your sleep, if your goals are on losing weight or getting more active, that poor sleep, even though we've spent that time sedentary, not like we're doing anything when we've been passed out, actually can have a negative impact the next day, because we're craving potentially higher calorie foods from the poor sleep. We're less likely to move, and then again, that's counterintuitive to our goals long term. So that's number 4. Number 5 is getting regular exercise in, but being aware not to have it or not to exercise too intensely or too late. So exercise is fantastic for so many reasons. Such a massive advocate for it. But again, it's one of the things that if people are squeezing it in just before bed, it can actually put them off on the wrong foot. And I'd probably say that we'd have a look at managing the exercise that they're doing in the evening if it came to that, where it was like, right, well, that's the only time we've got to do it. We go, right, so let's have a different form of exercise. We're going to wind us down that we've got another goal with, because sleep is that important, and potentially have a look at getting other exercise or physical activity in other parts during the day if possible. So again, it helps with the hormone release of winding us down before bed and managing stress and anxiety, which again is one of those things that can help, can really impact sleep as well, sort of the headspace side of it, the psychological aspects. But having exercise, getting rid of that nervous energy, or just pushing out a good workout, because getting out some of that nervous or stressful energy again can help us and get us into a good headspace during those workouts to again help us switch off before we go to bed. The reason we say not have it too close before bed is because it can almost keep us awake. We can be mentally quite active, and I know physically, when I used to play rugby and we might have night games or evening games, for example, I'd be absolutely written off physically, battered if I've just played like 80 minutes and it's been a tough game. You get into bed and your head's going a million miles an hour because you haven't quite switched off, or physically you might feel knackered, but you're still switched on. So again, having a couple of hours, maybe 2 to 3 hours before you go to bed, where you can almost zone into sort of having some food, having a bit of a bedtime routine before you go to sleep can have a big impact as well. So let's go through the 5 again. So first of all, we've got the regular sleep cycle if you can. Next up, we've got creating a relaxing bedtime routine, however that looks for you. We've got making sure your bedroom is dark, quiet and cool. Then we've also got avoiding caffeine and alcohol in the afternoon, and alcohol as much as we can potentially, or managing that as best we can, or picking and choosing when we're going to have it, but reducing caffeine potentially by midday, going into a decaf by 2 p.m. at the latest potentially, and seeing if that has a positive impact as well. And then last of all, getting some regular exercise in as well. So there you have it. Thank you very much for listening to today's episode of the Balanced Approach podcast. If you have any questions, queries, or would like to reach out to me, please do. I am at Louis Padian Nutrition, which is at LOUISPADIAN Nutrition on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and all other social media platforms. If you're looking for support in achieving your goals and living a healthier, happier, and more balanced life in the process, click the link below and inquire about working with me. Remember to subscribe to the Balanced Approach podcast wherever you're listening for more insightful episodes, and I look forward to speaking to you soon.